Welcome folks, we're going to be taking a look at jailbreaking an iPhone 3GS, and we're going to be updating it to 5.11 iOS, and it's going to be unlocked. So we're going to take you through quite a few of these examples in terms of what we've got to do to ensure we don't upgrade our baseband, and at the same time we have the ability to unlock it. And of course we've got a persistent or a untethered jailbreak. Right, so I've gone ahead and opened up Sn0wbreeze. So I'm going to click on OK, and as you can see, we pretty much can jailbreak all the way up to 5.11, and this is using a method that's going to allow us to reprogram essentially the operating system to include Cydia, which is going to give us the access to those other applications that are not part of the Apple Mac App Store. So we just click on the little arrow over there, and we actually have the opportunity to download the iOS firmware directly from Sn0wbreeze, so it makes it a lot easier than before. I've already done that, so I'm going to go along and just browse for the IPSW file, which is on my desktop, and there I have it. That is the legitimate iOS from Apple itself. So we'll go ahead and open that up, and straight off the bat you can see the prompt is going to ask me if I have an old or new boot ROM. If you're not sure, let's go ahead and detect it. And as you can see, we're going to be using a little utility that's part of the actual suite called iDetector, and that's going to really just detect whether the iPhone 3GS or the iPod Touch 2G contains a new boot ROM or old boot ROM. So we need to connect the device via the USB, and we're going to go straight into device firmware update. So we click on the start the DFU instructions, and we're going to prepare to press the power and the home button in 5. And we release the power. At which point you'll see your actual iPhone turn off, and there you go, real quick and easy. Came up telling us the iPhone 3GS is connected with the old boot ROM. So we'll go ahead and start that over again, and we'll actually quit the iDetector, and we can now select old boot ROM. Next up is obviously the verification that's taken place of the IPSW file. That is essentially the software from Apple themselves, the actual operating system. So we can now proceed with the little blue arrow again, and in this instance I'm going to go along and ensure that I choose the baseband preservation. As you can see, this only preserves the iPhone's baseband, it does not jailbreak or unlock the actual device. All other modes still do preserve the baseband, so it's a very important message to take note of. We're going to go along and select the expert mode, and at this point you're presented with these little 5 boxes. So essentially, if we go on the general first and click on the arrow, it's going to ask us what features we want to have enabled, such as the enable the battery percentage. Do we want to actually activate the iPhone, which really otherwise is known as Hacktivate? And something that you want to be very cautious about is the installation of the SSH, the secure shell. That's something you don't want to actually enable by default until you've actually changed your default password, which will be taking you through shortly. So as you can see, you've also got the iPhone software options or the IPSW options. That's the default root partition where your operating system files are going to be essentially stored. So we'll go ahead and select next, and as you can see, we get the opportunity to actually change the baseband, which we don't want to be doing again, to that of the iPad baseband. So we're going to not select that option. Make sure it does not have a tick in. And at this point we can go along and use either a custom bootloader or a custom recovery logo as well, and we're not feeling that geeky, so we're going to remove those. We'll kind of keep our phone as stock standard as possible, and you can obviously change that to whatever you want. So if you want to have a picture of Superman on your iPhone, absolutely go for it. You can see the requirements there for the actual file, the actual image itself, and you have to have at least one transparent pixel. So next, the arrow again, and we can actually choose to customize additional packages. Now for those of you that are a little bit more advanced in the IT industry, you'll see we get the opportunity to browse for a custom Debian file. Again, I'll be taking you through some additional examples for us to customize our iPhone by installing other types of packages that would once otherwise be meant for a Linux operating system. So we pretty much just went through all of these options by clicking on the general button. So if we go along to the unlocks as an example and we click the arrow, that will pretty much just take us through that loop again, and we want to make sure we remove those ticks once again and click the arrow. And once we've done that, the simple technique now to actually rebuild the iPhone software to include Cydia, which is essentially going to be jailbreaking it. In this step, we're obviously just going to build the iPhone software, and then we're going to go through and actually restore it onto our actual device. So we make sure we got the tick there, click on the next, and we even get asked if we want to play Pac-Man. We're going to just stick with the spinner. So at this point we can see how it's extracting the IPSW file. It's patching the kernel. That might take a little bit of time. It's also decrypting the root file system. So it goes through a number of different processes in order to essentially extract the original iPhone software, and in our case we're going to then include the actual jailbreak, which will give us the ability to run the interface for the software we want to be installing, called Cydia. So there you can see it's adding Cydia, and it's adding some additional components like the sexy kernel exploit. Now for those of you that don't know what the kernel is essentially the heart of the operating system. So when your actual iPhone normally boots up, it's going to start off with loading the kernel, and once the kernel is finished loading, it's then going to create the additional user environment, which is where you normally see your PIN or your actual iPhone screen. So it's going ahead and rebuilding the root file system. So essentially once this is completed, this process, it's going to save a recooked or a remodified version of the iPhone software, typically to our desktop, which we'll then use to actually restore to the iPhone. This method is the best method in order to preserve the baseband. There are other methods out there for jailbreaking the device. We'll be taking you through the next scenario, which is going to be jailbreaking an iPhone 4S, and we'll use a slightly different method, a different package than what we're using right now. Of course, this is Sn0wbreeze version 2.9.5. Patching the RAM disk, patching the IBSS, and finally goes through the creation of the new iPhone software. And there we go. So we got to now follow on screen to ensure we actually put our iPhone into DFU mode. So I'll be recording the actual screen of what we're going to be seeing on the actual iPhone. So we'll hit OK. We'll make sure our device is turned off. Once it's turned off, we can then hit the start button. And so as you can see, prepare to press the home and so forth button, which we're doing. And you can see the device is now in a pwned DFU state, black screen. We can now launch the iTunes and do the Shift plus Restore. Now you've got to take note that the reason why mine went straight into the running of iReb was because I actually ran the previous iDetector to ensure I had the old or newer boot ROM. So at this point I just have to select OK, and we'll now bring up our iTunes. And there you can see iTunes quite clearly stating iTunes has detected an iPhone in recovery mode. You need to restore this iPhone before it can be used with iTunes. So we'll select OK. And in order to restore it, if you're on a Windows machine, you've got to hold the Shift key down and then click on the Restore button. If you don't do that, it's not going to allow us to select the custom iPhone software package we've just created. You can see the iPhone software package we've just created has the name of Sn0wbreeze, so you won't get confused. We simply open that up, and you can see iTunes doing the next bit of stuff there where it's extracting the software, and it will go through various stages of verification, checks, and then eventually you'll see what happens on the actual iPhone screen. So right now it's preparing the iPhone for restore. take note that your iPhone at this point, your iPhone screen is still black. Right now we see our actual iPhone turning on at this point. It's going through the process of installing some device drivers, and we get the little Apple logo appear on the screen of the iPhone. And there we have the little spinner. We can clearly see that the jailbreaking has taken place because we've got that actual custom logo which you wouldn't otherwise normally have. So at this point we're waiting on the iPhone to go through the process of obviously restoring that custom iPhone software package. Now you would notice that your process, if you're following this literally minute for minute, we've actually cut this to shorten out the actual video, so you're not going to just be sitting there and listening to the cool music playing in the background. And not to mention watching that little bar move up along the screen of your iPhone. Not very exciting, folks. So we can see it's progressing pretty nicely with the restoring of the iPhone software. We got that little bar filling up pretty quickly at the bottom of the wonderful little logo there, which is obviously i8snow. And that's of course the website for the folks that have done a fantastic job of creating this entire package for us. It's never been as easy as it's become nowadays with some of the new techniques and tools, as well as the reliability. So at this point we'll actually see the bar moving a lot quicker on the actual iPhone screen. Okay, we're just about done on the iPhone. You can see how it's verifying the iPhone restore now. We may need to just wind the engine up here a little bit just to kick it up the backside just for the last few seconds there. You can see it's right at the end. Now one thing you've got to realize that a lot of people have the opinion of jailbreaking the phone is bad for the phone, or of course you do stand to lose or void your warranty in certain countries, but at the end of the day you're going to see some of our additional segments here as to one of the reasons, one of the main reasons why we want to actually jailbreak our phone, and that's essentially to harden some of the security. And we'll take you through some of the things that we have the ability to do and change, essentially the default root password. So the root password is for the real administrator of the phone that has full access to the device. Through all the iOS revisions, Apple have kept the password standard, which is pretty well publicly known, and if you don't jailbreak your device, or you do jailbreak your device, there isn't much of a difference from a security aspect. The problem becomes more of a security issue if you start installing some of the cracked software from other repositories, which we'll be looking at and making sure that we point out the weaknesses and the risks you might be taking when downloading some of that dodgy stuff. So at that point we literally just see the phone rebooting, so the actual iPhone shutting down, blank screen. And then we see the boot up with the Apple logo. We could have obviously customized that. And at this point, once the phone has completed the boot process, we're going to be given the opportunity to go through and obviously answer some of those questions, which is effectively as if you've got a brand new iPhone. We will have the opportunity to either restore the software and also the photos and things like that had we have taken a backup before we started the process. So that's another very important point. You want to make sure you've actually backed up your entire phone. So essentially, once we finished completing this process, we would actually have the chance to restore the software. At this point, you can actually see the Apple logo still on the iPhone. We obviously do have the opportunity to now go along and actually set this up in our iTunes application, or we can simply go along to the actual iPhone screen now and go through the wizardry questions on the screen. So we will essentially go next, select the country, do we want to enable the location services, and then if we don't select a wireless network in this case, we're going to continue, and of course at this point it's going to tell us we want to actually set this up with iTunes. So I'm going to select setup as a new iPhone, agree to the terms and conditions, and we're going to say not to automatically send diagnostic usage information. And at this point we're now ready to rock and roll and start using our iPhone. So on the screen you will flip over you should now clearly see there is the Cydia icon, and we'll be taking you through what goes next on the next session. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, folks.